Well, Canada's Immigration Minister Jason Kenney has received an honorary PhD from an Israeli university. But it seems this ceremony has not been held as the pro-Israel minister wanted. For more on that, we're now joined by our correspondent Joshua Blakeney, who's been following the story. Joshua, it seems that not everybody is happy with this degree being conferred on Mr. Kenney. Why is that?
Well, Mr. Kenney's position in terms of foreign policy and indeed domestic policy and immigration policy is highly unpopular in Canada. I think immigration groups are critical of Minister Kenney's attempt to de-democratize the working class by bringing in migrant laborers on tenuous visas to Canada where they can't become citizens and engage in the democratic process. So many immigrant groups are upset with Mr. Kenney for the way that he's treating migrant workers and using immigration policy as a tool of censorship often. And when it comes to foreign policy, I mean, these two things go hand in hand, because when it comes to foreign policy, clearly Mr. Kenney is someone who prescribes to Zionist exceptionalism. He's somebody who is willing to whitewash the almost day-to-day crimes of the Zionist regime, as your last report clearly shows. Israel is murdering Palestinians wantonly on a daily basis. We all see scenes of white phosphorus gas being dropped on schools and mosques and hospitals. Yet Minister Kenney, at a time when leaders around the world are ostracizing Israel, is willing to prostrate, if people will excuse the pun, prostrate himself to the Zionist regime and to pro-Israel forces in Canada, which is why he's being rewarded with this honorary degree from an Israeli university. And so the protesters were partially criticizing him for his one-sided stance on the Israel-Palestine impasse, and also for his immigration policies, which also go in hand with his Zionism and his Islamophobia. Of course, in 2009, we had this stark reality of George W. Bush came on his first visit to a foreign country, and the immigration minister overlooked Canada's Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act and Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, and afforded impunity to a self-confessed torturer. And a few weeks later, the Minister of Immigration banned Press TV's George Galloway from entering Canada and tarnished him as a terrorist, something which Mr. Kenney was later indicted for and given a judicial caning for by a judge who said that he acted unlawfully. And this, some have alleged, was on the advice of Jewish terrorist groups which have a safe haven here in Canada. And so we see a double standard. I mean, Mr. Kenney holds himself up as someone who stands for universal principles, for something called Canadian values. But in reality, he's a lick-spittle for the most venal supporters of the State of Israel, something which many Canadians believe runs against the Canadian national interest. Canada is not an ethnic nationalist state. Rather, it's a highly multicultural, multi-ethnic state, and is much the better for being so. Now, Minister Kenney appears to be standing for the obverse. He appears to be standing for this kind of monocultural, Eurocentric, imperialistic set of values, which is why we saw a protest amass outside the hotel, the Royal Hotel in York today, where Mr. Kenney was being anointed with this Zionist appellation, much to the displeasure of those outside the building.
All right, many thanks. Press TV's correspondent Joshua Blakeney from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Thank you for the update, Joshua. Moving on, the Israeli Air Force has tested an upgraded version of its Iron Dome missile system. The Minister of Military Affairs, Ehud Barak, claims the test constitutes a new success in the project to strengthen the Iron Dome's performance. Israeli media say the latest version of the Iron Dome is designed to intercept medium-range missiles. The system is partly funded by the United States. Tel Aviv has invested a huge budget